Ty, Andrzej, wiesz jaki budynek został najlepszym budynkiem na świecie?
Nie, jaki?
Zaskoczę was, nie Kostka.
No właśnie, nie Kostka, bo szkoła i to dosyć mocno rozrzeźbiona. Teraz w tym odcinku zobaczycie, jak to zostało zaprezentowane i dlaczego to było tak dobre, że zostało najlepszym budynkiem świata World Architecture Festival 2024 Singapur.
Paweł Kobierzewski,
Andrzej Truszczyński.
prowadząc architekturę.
Zostańcie z nami. Ta relacja jest prosto z Singapuru. Dlaczego? Bo my też byliśmy tam na miejscu, byliśmy finalistami World Architecture Festival i prezentowaliśmy fabrykę wody w kategorii sport. Natomiast najlepszy budynek pobił wszystkich i była to właśnie szkoła Darlington Public School, wykonana przez FJC Studio. I teraz chcielibyśmy Wam pokazać tą prezentację, którą osobiście nagraliśmy, także sorry trochę za jakość, ale myślę, że bardzo fajna prezentacja, bardzo ciekawa i przede wszystkim niesamowita mowa speakera.
Tak, jak ja usłyszałem po prostu wstęp, to się zastanawiałem, czy to idzie jakiś lektor, bo to jest normalnie David Attenborough, nie? Więc tutaj zobaczcie, czy też będziecie mieli takie wrażenie, mimo oczywiście jakości, bo wiecie, no warunki polowe. Natomiast jedna rzecz tutaj jest warta zaznaczenia, że byliśmy na praktycznie wszystkich prezentacjach finałowych i obaj po niej stwierdziliśmy z Andrzejem, że
to będzie wygrane.
To będzie to. I mogliśmy się założyć, jakby byli tam bookmacherzy, to byśmy...
Także zobaczcie i po całej tej 10-minutowej wypowiedzi my jeszcze skomentujemy tą jego wypowiedź, żeby Wam w skrócie powiedzieć, co powiedzieli sędziowie i jak to wszystko wyglądało. Także oglądajcie i czekajcie na nasz komentarz.
Thank you. Darlington Public School in Sydney. First of all, I would like to acknowledge the original custodians of this land, the Gadi people. And also I want to thank our collaborators, Aboriginal elders, uncles, aunties, the teachers, and most of all, the kids. The site is close to the inland bays of Sydney Harbour, originally rolling hills, woodlands, and creeks. This is the plan after 100 years of settlement, industrialisation and urbanisation. The site is on the original path of a natural creek. Darlington is a working class suburb. The school was first established in the 1870s, moving to our site in 1970. This is the example of the nearby workers' housing and the adjacent railway workshops that employed thousands. It was a place of trade union action, and our site was formerly workers' terrace houses and the remnants of the creek. Our site on the left, with the original school on the right, subsumed now by the university. The Aboriginal Housing Company served a real local need, and the nearby block is well known for Aboriginal activism. At the nearby Redfern Park, a Prime Minister gave an important speech telling the truth about the treatment of Aboriginal people. This is our site before we started work, and now with the new school. We began this project by asking how we could make a school that is culturally inclusive and contributes to a decolonised vision for the future. It would have to bring the urban and natural landscapes together. Here is our concept on the site, surrounded by fine-grained housing and the large blocks of the university to the right. To the street, we made low linear brick forms relating to the old brick factory buildings nearby and the scale of the workers' terraces. Familiar and human-scaled forms with a low-strung archway defining a welcoming school arrival. At the corner, with an existing church and corner pub, we positioned the school hall like a community civic hall, reaching up to partner the church and pub. The garden playground is a contrast to this urban setting, wrapped and embraced by the organic form of the learning veranda. Architecture and landscape interwoven, and remembering a pre-European natural landscape. with the bridge recalling the position of the original creek. It is a concept bringing together the colonial brick workers' village with the organic forms of a pre-colonial natural landscape. The colonial and post-industrial models of learning also contrast with First Nations storytelling. We wanted to give form to a school that embraces such diversity. It was hard doing this within the institutional requirements of state public education, but we were able to adjust the learning model for greater cultural inclusion, with varying forms of enclosure, scale and structure, to reflect and welcome a diversity of needs in progressive collaborative learning. Nearby architectural forms inspired sky-lit learning hubs and community hall, protective enclosures for scale, security and welcome, and natural landscapes, creek ecologies and gardens. I'll take you through the new school, beginning with the youngest, preschool. Secure spaces with a separate entry and garden. This is the modest preschool entry for 60 children in interconnected clusters of 20. Spaces soft and hard, wet and dry, and with a closeness to the floor. Plywood boxes, storage and cubbyholes. Open to a secure play garden, only for the little ones. The curved form of the learning veranda gives shade and a protective embrace for the littlest children. This is the main school entry and address. A low brick arch to welcome all the varied-sized humans, with the sawtooth forms of learning hubs behind. A diversity of structured and unstructured learning in hubs of 90 students, and a smaller 60-student hub for selective learning. Each hub is made up of open learning, quiet withdrawal rooms, maker and presentation spaces, tech hub and resources node, all connected to the open learning veranda. For engaged participatory learning, self-directed groups, outdoor veranda group work, and one-on-one or Lego collaboration, or anything really. An important complement to these indoor learning modes is the organic curvilinear form of the learning veranda, in ribbons and folds that relate to the landscape, bringing together outdoor learning, nature hunts, play, and memories of the creek, the library and the sports courts, and remembering the garden as a place for storytelling, and not forgetting the essential retreat for exhausted staff. The school hall that addresses the street corner is made up of a covered forum space, library and hall, all opening to the street through the generous arch, welcoming the whole community. The school hall opens out through a big garage door for extending performances and a diversity of events and ceremonies, all connected to the garden, healing country and restoring ecologies. A little about materials and construction. The learning veranda, with its mediating connection to the landscape, was created from the manipulation of the pragmatic brief requirements for stairs and corridors. The perforated screen filters light and air through an interpretive pattern of casuarina stands that were traditionally a safe place for women and children. It is shaded, naturally lit, and naturally ventilated. It is a little like being in the trees. Sawtooth brick learning pavilions with the little low windows for the children to look out of. The community hall with grand brick reveals and civic aspirations. And the library that reaches out in between curves. The integrated artworks are from authentic hands of Aboriginal artists with a deep connection to the school, including Neil Thorne's work adapted from the old school and identifies designed by Black Douglas. Prints of local animals scattered across the floor for the children to track down, stories of country traced in the ground and etched into the cladding. The sustainable and ecological design strategies are based on low energy, material and passive systems, on-site energy generation through PV 100 kilowatt arrays, natural lighting and ventilation. The construction was staged to avoid temporary buildings and the associated cost on carbon money. And the veranda-like learning spaces were extensive. They have very light levels of material use and enclosure, all naturally lit and naturally ventilated. Local was important, locally sourced materials, durable and long-lasting. Local industries and fabricators, including First Nations fabricators like Amaroo Joineries that support opportunities for young Aboriginal people. Significant trees were all retained and native endemic species to support biodiversity. And finally, some quotes from the children. We got to stay on site the whole time, have a school that is like country in the middle of the city, and a park to play in and learn in, and a school that represents the modern Australia we should strive for. And when school's over, the building misses them and longs for their return. Thank you.
Yeah, this is brilliant. This is beautiful. Congratulations. I mean, this volumetric composition and all these different volumes being together in the beginning, it's kind of unimaginable, but at the end, this works well. And I can imagine the work behind it. So, just one question, why did you think about changing the color of the brick, for example, in different parts? As well as I see there are some variations, right?
Yeah. I think that's partly because the industrial buildings were made out of this darker, liver-like brick, and they were larger scale. Mm-hmm. And then the terrace houses, the smaller ones, they're rendered or they're lighter in finish. So we wanted to differentiate between those scales, something closer to the ground and something set back behind.
Okay, great, thank you.
From an ignorance point of view, the Aboriginal kind of input that came into the brief and dialogue with the teachers and the community, to what extent did the earth side of it and the sky side of that dialogue get responded to by your design conceptually to do with the ground plane inside the building and let's call it the ceiling sky plane?
Yes, the school, 25% of the children at the school are Aboriginal and 25% of the teachers are as well. So it was a very close engagement from the very beginning. We started with like a town hall meeting. And the issues that you're alluding to, that connection to the natural world and a desire to not be so separated from it in closed off boxes was a key issue for us. And we had to reconcile that with the needs and perhaps understandable needs of a state standardised educational system. So the garden, the playground garden, natural landscape, probably the most important space. But the development of this weaving veranda space was a way in which we could bring those two together and create a space where they could just walk straight out from the classroom, the classes could spill out into that, they could retreat to that if they needed to find a connection to nature, still be close to the sky in a sense, feel the air, but be safe and separated. That was evolved out of that strategy. The other one was a consideration of the perimeter, of not being too enclosed, not being trapped, yet also being secure. It's an inner city school. So they were key themes for us in dealing with, I guess, what are the needs for a more sympathetically inclusive culture of learning. And that closeness to the ground and the floor, being able to sit on the floor, sit on decks, sit in the classroom spaces on the floor was really important.
I was just curious that because you undulate the ground outside,
Yes.
but you stop it at the building, and kind of wanted to feel the undulation or the movement of the earth, if you like,
Yeah.
maybe have continued internally.
Yes, it does slope down the side slightly. And you can see we've tried to, in a way, rediscover the natural landscape of the site, which had been pretty much built over. But also, what's important in a school is an equitable access. So, the children with disabilities and so on have to move around. So there are quite limits to what we could do in terms of splitting the levels.
Yes, well, I really like your project. I like schools, especially for the rules they have in the memory of children, no? Because school, we call, is the third educators, no? It is the family, teachers, and the architecture, no? Because they're going to remember the time they spend in the school. And I find this a little bit strange in the drawing you show in the beginning, this relationship between the rectangular building and these curly things. It looks like not matching together, but in drawing is an abstraction, but the real looks like very well connected. So and remember me some of the landscape also of Outback Australia, this kind of a mountains thing. So I find many reference not only as a building but also generating a sort of a landscape inside of this little garden. So I thought also this material using the perforating is not, normally it looks like a banal, no, it's just like perforating, but this kind of pictures behind is to give me some texture. I think the children can enjoy that. I really appreciated this relationship between the space, this veranda, and the stairs, and it's a place for moving inside. The quality of this space, it looks like a secondary, it looks like in your project is a permanent, is fundamental.
Yeah, I think it is primary.
Yeah,
and its geometry relates to existing tree locations, but also to create spaces, that are not so rigid for people to gather in, little spaces around stairs and so on. So the children seem to love it.
Yeah.
They gave us a whole list of things they wanted right at the beginning, and they wanted a tree house, kind of think maybe we got that. They wanted a park. They wanted to find country, but they also wanted a play castle and water slides, which we were unable to do.
Yeah, because it's good that it's the rational part of a school, that the rooms is okay, but I think we need to move more and more than school needs to be more organic, because we are organic, and then people's moving, and also the pedagogic is changed, so
yeah.
I think
that's the bit. I think it's the most important part, and it wasn't in the brief, but I think it was in the children's brief,
Yeah,
it's not just the circulation area.
Yeah,
It's a gathering area.
very sensitive. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, I think also it's an excellent handling of the geometry. You come in through an arch and you see this industrial kind of form at the back, almost knot-like thing, and then you go in and you're surprised by this curvilinear form, and for me it just forms really, really interesting, full of surprises. Every angle you look at, the geometries are doing something else with each other. So, but I think I also noticed that there seems to be, in the images, there seems to be a lot of freedom with which the space is used. So I want to know that, was the pedagogy of the school to be in this very free of the education, and that inspired the design? Or was it the design as it grew, and then when children occupied it, was it the architecture that influenced the freedom? So what was the relationship?
It really works across those scales, I think, because it's fair to say that the educational model from state education is an evolving one and is relatively progressive. So it is based around collaborative teaching and learning, and a lot of the essentials of that brief were in the state model. But we were able to adapt to the model, and that was adapted through the input of the community, the students, the teachers, and our own interpretation of, I think, what were the fundamental values and vision for the school. So we've stretched that and we've pulled it around, and this element and the connection to the garden is probably the most fundamental. But then we've overlapped other things, so making the school hall open out into the forum space, overlapping ways in which we can gain value out of limited means. There are also things that we've tried to contribute to it. The surprise, you're exactly right. When you're on the street, you go through the arch and you come into the garden, and it's a bit magical. You know, no one's expecting it to be like that, and you know, the kids seem to love it.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Wow, i co ty na to?
No, słuchałem tego drugi raz, ale robi takie same wrażenie. No i Andrzeju, jakbyś powiedzmy to skomentował z naszego punktu widzenia tutaj w Polsce? Czy to ma jakieś analogie i czy to może być jakieś takie wytyczne, powiedzmy, jeżeli chodzi o najlepszą architekturę 2024 roku, jakoś przemyślenia tutaj dla nas?
Myślę, że jeśli chodzi o cały festiwal, World Architecture Festival, to było mocno odczuwalne, że komisja czy sędziowie zwracają bardzo mocną uwagę na tę łączność obiektu ze społeczeństwem. Chyba, tak jak już gdzieś tam to diagnozowaliśmy, wynika to trochę z takiej traumy po-covidowej, czyli wszystkie te obiekty, które były takie puste, czyste, piękna architektura, ale jednak pozbawiona tego kontaktu z ludźmi, bardzo kojarzyła się z tą pustką covidową, tych miast wyludnionych i innych rzeczy. Także tutaj komisja jakby mocno się na tym skupiła. Dwa, jak ten obiekt jest zintegrowany z otoczeniem, czyli...
No, właśnie to chyba jest dosyć ważne, no bo na pierwszy rzut oka, nawet tu dzisiaj jeszcze raz przeglądając materiały, mieliśmy pewien problem, żeby na stronie World Architecture Festival znaleźć informacje, w sensie tę konkretną część, zakładkę, gdzie jest opisane o zwycięstwie, ponieważ ten obiekt był pokazany z innej strony. On jest nieoczywisty, ponieważ jest tam zderzenie kilku form, które nawet dla sędziów podczas tej finałowej prezentacji było trochę zaskakujące, ale się obronili, nie?
Bardzo się obronili. Właśnie to wyróżnia World Architecture Festival od innych konkursów, że tutaj ten 10-minutowy pitch, on jest bardzo istotny. To i w jaki sposób przedstawimy tą swoją wizję. I tutaj ta wizja, że na początku było to rzeczka, przy niej aborygeni sobie tam grali i opowiadali historię. Potem zmieniło się to w taki teren fabryczny, mocno
industrializowany.
Teren fabryczny, który po prostu sprawił, że nieprzyjemnie się tam przebywało i teraz te wszystkie jakby naleciałości zostały zebrane w jedno i stąd było tam mnogość form, ale jednak w tym chaosie była reguła, zasada.
Było to uzasadnienie,
i
nie?
to naprawdę...
No ale czy w takim razie, Andrzej, można powiedzieć, że jest jakiś przepis na najlepszy budynek na świecie, przynajmniej w danym roku, że albo właśnie to musi być jakaś mocna forma typu kubiczna, albo właśnie jakieś krzywoliniowe? Czy to jest w ogóle zasada? Moim zdaniem, jak to dzisiaj wygląda?
Myślę, że nie. Myślę, że właśnie to też pokazało, że na tym festiwalu są najlepsze obiekty na świecie. Naprawdę ze wszystkich stron, z różnych warunków kulturowych, z temperaturowych i naprawdę ciężko jest coś wybrać. Mamy małe obiekty, duże obiekty, stadiony, no po prostu jak to wszystko porównać do siebie. I myślę, że tutaj ten aspekt właśnie, jak ten obiekt wpływa na lokalną infrastrukturę, społeczeństwo, połączenie z miastem, że na przykład obiekty, które były gdzieś tam stały na pustyni, w sensie gdzieś tam w deweloperce jeszcze wczesnej, że to był jedyny obieg i pola dookoła, nie był zbyt dobrze odbierany, a właśnie taki zintegrowany z lokalnym społeczeństwem, to zdobywało najwięcej punktów.
Ja powiem jeszcze tyle, że właśnie na pierwszy rzut oka, oglądając jakby zderzenie tych różnych brył, miało się wrażenie, że to jest dziwne, nie do końca to ze sobą gra. Ale po uzasadnieniu, po jakby zapoznaniu się z całą tą...
Wszystko stało się jasne.
Tak, wszystko stało się jasne. I tu pojawia się jeszcze jedna ważna rzecz, że ten obiekt, mimo tego, że z różnych stron różnie go można odebrać i tylko tak naprawdę z góry widać, że on jest taką mnogością tych form, bo one dopiero z tej perspektywy są ze sobą dobrze widoczne, to on mimo wszystko jest ciekawy i dobrze komponujący się z otoczeniem praktycznie zarówno z tej krzywoliniowej strony, jak i z tych kubicznych form, czy tych takich właśnie wręcz industrialnych i to po prostu ze sobą pasuje. I moim zdaniem receptą na dobrą architekturę po prostu jest dobre rzemiosło, dobry projekt, który jest przemyślany, funkcjonalny i to zawsze się obroni.
Tak.
No i oczywiście prezentacja i głos Davida Attenborough.
Na pewno pomogły.
Pomogło, tak.
Także czekamy na Wasze opinie, co Wy myślicie o tym obiekcie, czy takie coś by się dobrze sprzedało w Polsce, co z właśnie taką traumą po-covidową, czy Wy też uważacie, że gdzieś to jest zauważalne w jakby architekturze, bo jak już stwierdziliśmy, architektura jest odbiciem jakiejś kultury, czy wydarzeń, które nas otaczają. Także wszystko to, strefa komentarzy jest dla Was, także piszcie, lajkujcie.
I nie zapomnijcie o subskrypcji, a my się widzimy już w kolejnym odcinku. Do zobaczenia.
Cześć!
Ty, Andrzej, wiesz jaki budynek został najlepszym budynkiem na świecie?
Jaki?
Nie kostka.
Specjalnie dla Was? Tak? Teraz nie wiem, co mam być dalej.
Powiedzieć, no.
Chcecie wiedzieć, jak wygrywa się World Architecture Festival?
Tak, to jeżeli chcecie ten